Thanks, everybody. Yeah, so search is a really dark, cold place. It's really millions of machines that sit there and take in your inputs, and then for every query you issue, about 10,000 machines get spun up, and we apply some math and some algorithms, and every query comes in, about 1,000 rules get run against it, and from that we give you an answer. It's really just like real life. And so for years, we built tools to try to make search better. We've added images and videos and news feeds and comparisons and review aggregation, all this great stuff. And we've even added Wolfram Alpha. I mean, who uses that anymore? Just kidding, Stephen, if you're out there in the audience. But all these great tools are written by geeks, and they're written for geeks. And you know, in search, every query can kind of look like a nail, and us geeks, we love our hammers. But there was one little problem. Despite our efforts to build this Swiss Army knife of information retrieval, it turns out you people are fickle to trust decisions to machines. And it's not just big decisions. It's even small decisions. It's, should I wear a jacket outside today? Where's the best place in Nolita to eat Italian food if I'm a vegetarian? Those types of things. In fact, 80% of people told us that they would use all these amazing tools that we built to narrow down their search. But they would actually stop. They'd walk away until they had a chance to talk to somebody else. That means 8 out of 10 times our tools fail in favor of actually just talking to somebody. It's absolutely crazy. But now we have this new arrow in our quiver. We have this new thing that we can actually use, and it's this explosion of social data. But is it really going to help us make search more useful, more bettered for all of us? Yes, it is, both for technical reasons and also for human reasons. So let's say technical first. The first problem is there's simply too much data. There's too much. 2/3 of people we surveyed feel there's an overwhelming amount of data returned to them in search. Overwhelming. And they're right. Last year alone, humans created 1.8 zettabytes of data.
What's a zettabyte?
Exactly. Thank you, Jeff. A zettabyte is a big, big number. In fact, you can't even actually comprehend that. It's actually 57 billion 32-gig iPad 2s. It's that many. If you stack those end to end, you would have 2 Great Walls of China. It's that big. It's the equivalent of every man, woman, and child in the U.S. tweeting 3 times a minute for the next 23,000 years. Or how much Scoble does in a month. Just kidding, Robert. I'm on fire with these guys today. So 60% of people told us that they wonder whether they found the best information when they're using search, and it's harder to make decisions. You see, neuroscientists actually tell us there's this thing called decision quicksand, which says our minds, the way our minds work, we see a bunch of options, a bunch of things, and the more things we see, the more important we assume that decision is. And in search, when you have every query returns back 1.8 billion results, our minds get overwhelmed, and we actually begin to equate Jersey Shore with ovarian cancer as being equivalently important because we see about the same amount of results, and that's absolutely ridiculous. So from a human perspective, we need help, and social data can actually help narrow down that mass of data. From a machine perspective, processing 1.8 zettabytes of data, and by the way, this year it's projected to go to 2.5 zettabytes of data, which is, again, just a mind-blowingly large number. But it's getting harder to process all this information. Now, social data itself is very fleeting. It's very different. It's images, it's updates, it's tweets, it's all these different types of things that aren't normally indexable by search engines. But all those things actually provide us clues. They help us narrow down that 1.8 zettabytes of data into something which actually can be useful and meaningful to use. So social data isn't a fad. In fact, it's a requirement for the machines that we have today to understand and process all this data that we have. So that's the technical reason why social data is so important. From a human standpoint, we're actually biologically conditioned in our lizard and primate brains to do this. In fact, I was out doing some studies with some of our researchers. I was at a woman's home, and she was planning a trip somewhere. And she actually went and she tried to use the web to find this information. She printed out all these forums and printed out all these hotels and printed out all these flight options, and she bound them into a binder, and she went to her husband and said, "Honey, which of these should we go do?" I'm thinking, wow, that's really bizarre. You know, that's such a strange behavior. But in actuality, well, a lot of us do the same thing. We use bookmarks. We clip links into mail, we send them out. We are biologically conditioned to engage others when we're actually making decisions. In fact, cavemen, if you think about it, they communicated to stay safe, to spread news and stories, and generally form a strong society. But the cavemen were mostly within earshot. This all could happen because they were together. And as we progressed as a human species, we began to wander out to the prairies, and it was harder and harder to actually have these conversations over long distances. And so we began to crave this. And so what did? We invented the telephone. The telephone actually began to get us back to our roots as cave people, and actually began to help us reconnect to each other. And now, of course, the developed world is now completely connected. We've now really come full circle, and our ability to do that which we are biologically conditioned to do is now, at scale, is now at our fingertips. So we want this new digital communal collective. We want this to augment that which we do naturally, which is to ask people for advice when making decisions. So at the end of the day, human social data will lead to better outcomes using search. And there's a few reasons for this. The first is that we know from research that social data actually helps with better decision making. There was an article by Jonah Lehrer in, I think, The Atlantic, or maybe it was the Journal last year. He examined Wall Street traders, and he examined how they used social data to make better trades. And so he examined 66 day traders over an 18-month period. And he discovered that these traders would talk amongst themselves. And they exchanged, in fact, an astonishing number of messages, over 2 million exchanges over the course of that 18-month period. And what they found was that the average trader was engaging in 16 IM conversations at a single time. But what they found was when they actually acted together, when they actually made decisions based on the social data, 70% of their trades made money, which is about 20 points higher than the average. And they more than doubled their money per trade. Now, you might just say that's insider trading, and that's obvious, but actually, no, it's not. This was actually something where they actually collaborated in real time using these tools, and they were able to make better decisions as a result of that. And that's actually really important for happiness. Other studies have found that when we follow a path that someone else has already gone down that looks like ours, we're actually happier with that decision. So if I know that someone else bought this shirt and I see it on that person and I say, well, I like that shirt, I'll buy that as well, I'm actually happier with that decision. So we know that social data is critical for happiness. So that's how social is going to affect search. It's not showing +1s or likes next to a result. It's about two things. It's first about replicating what you do in real life, but much faster, much more efficiently, and much more comprehensively. And I mean, one of the ways we're doing that, and this is not a pitch for Bing per se, but we introduced this new social search thing last month, and we had this thing called Sidebar, which Sidebar shows you for each query which of your friends might have information about that query. So you know now, if I love a restaurant in Nolita that's vegetarian, for example, and Krupali does a query for Nolita restaurants, she'll see me now as somebody who can help her with that actual query. But it also shows you which people you don't know that might have information about that query. So it might show you a great reviewer in New York who does restaurant reviews, and she can give you ideas about particular places to go. The bottom line is that it's what you do today amplified via digital. So it's faster and more efficient. Literally, now we are able to use this social detritus that we're all casting off in all of our different signals and all of our different methods, and the 3.5 billion Facebook updates a day, to contribute to driving intelligence, social intelligence, into search. And that's how this will continue to happen as we move forward. Thanks a lot.